Over the week, I drew a one-shot manga, a short illustrated story of 18 pages, and this was my schedule to try and make it happen in such a short amount of time. I averaged around 15 to 16 hours a day, every single day of the week, and of course I'll share the end result with you by the end of the video, but I think the sheer insanity of how this project came together is even more interesting, so I really hope you'll watch that. But why draw a manga? Other than I've kind of always wanted to try it, I was really curious to see if my art fundamentals that I've developed over the years would hold up doing something so different than what I usually do. So for the uncultured, mangas are just comics for Japan, or like made in that specific format where you read from left to right, just like in Japanese, with black and white drawings only, no colors. And they often come out as like weekly releases, about like 20 pages per chapter, as like part of a larger magazine like Shonen Jump that you've probably heard about. So my goal was also to aim for something like that. Obviously not 20 pages because I have no experience. But what could I do in just a single week? Anyways, you might have also heard about manhwas, which is basically the same as manga but for Korea. China also has their version, and they're all kind of slightly different formats. Like Korean manhwas read from top to bottom only. All the panels are just in a straight line and you just scroll down, and they're also colored. I guess I'm not very cultured myself because I only found out about those after watching Solo Leveling this year. But anyways, I chose the manga route because that's literally the only one that I'm familiar with. I only ever read mangas as a kid, so that was the only format that I had like modest understanding of. And the word modest is doing heavy lifting here. But like I said, I've always wanted to draw short comics. So after last week's video where I introduced a little bit about the characters and the world that my story is going to take place in, I started planning my week ahead and created this schedule. You've probably seen this real schedule from an actual manga artist that appeared online like a while back. Craziness you have to go through to pump out 20 pages per week, as is standard over there. So I figured I'd probably have to do the same, or worse if I wanted to produce something that's not complete trash. Again, having no experience doing this and all. So how did it go? Things started concerningly slow. All I did Saturday and all day Sunday is basically sitting in my chair and looking into the distance the whole time, occasionally taking notes. Like I teach the basics of storytelling in my art program, so I am familiar with the structures of stories, but having to come up with all of it in just a single day felt really rushed. But let's get to Monday, because that's when I started to dump what was in my head on paper finally. And that's really when panic started to creep in a little bit. I really struggled with the writing. I initially meant this as like a one-shot story, but I kind of screwed myself and came up with this huge story arc around the characters, thinking I might want to continue the stories like for 1,000 chapters. I don't know what I was thinking, because that's not happening. And that was just way more than I needed for just a short like 10 to 12 page story, like I had planned. Also, I realized I had no idea what the correct page format should be like. So I jumped on QBrush and bought this template for manga pages, and I used the storyboard template to lay down what I imagined would happen on every page. Though obviously that was super temporary because I didn't really know what I was doing, but things were progressing. Now on Tuesday, I started working on the name, the nemu, which is basically what Japanese artists call their draft. You know, like what they would send to their editor to get feedback on before committing to the final copy. So I watched a few videos showing how different artists do theirs, and some were very rough, so that's kind of what I went with at first. Just loose drawings to get an idea of the pacing. I mean, look at those beautiful drawings. I wrapped up that day at like 3 a.m., but I had kind of found a rhythm, so I was able to complete the draft for a lot more pages than I thought. You can see how my approach changed over those few pages too, going from extra loose at first to a lot more put together as I went. So after a few hours of much needed sleep, I got right back into it and I was able to crank out 10 whole pages on Wednesday. I think I was just better at planning the action in my head, so things started to pick up a little bit of pace. So I'm working on all the different pages all at once, so I have them all laid out here. Obviously, I'm not done. Now, the second that I started working on those panels, I realized that paneling as a whole was going to be my biggest hurdle. Because when you read a manga, you don't really pay attention too much, but how do you split those panels? Like, when do you say, all right here, that's gonna be a box, over here, that's gonna be another one? What's the logic behind it? Like the pacing, the dialogue, all of this stuff. Directing, basically, is something I've never done. But I got a little worried at the end of the day working on those last pages because I needed to stop drawing more pages that I wouldn't have time to complete. I was initially planning like 10 to 12, like I said. Now I got 18, way more than what I initially planned. So I kind of had to rush the ending to make it work as a result. But you'll see in a minute when I reveal the final. But I'm not there yet. So it's Thursday and it's time I started working on those final pages, bro. Time is running out. I'm saving editing the video for Saturday. So can I do 9 pages today and then 9 tomorrow? Ooh, yikes. Maybe? I have no idea, honestly. I've never done a final page. So I guess it's time to find out. So I slapped the draft of the first manga page that I had in the template that I bought. And then I went, oh no. I don't have enough to start the final drawings here. Like I could go straight to final with these later pages because they're way more fleshed out. Like the layout is basically final, but this, I'm gonna need a better sketch for this page before I work on the final. And that kind of makes my whole schedule seem impossible all of a sudden, doesn't it? But anyways, maybe it's quick, so let's find out. So I sketched it out, inked it, and then I started to experiment with this screen tone brush that I made. Basically, I was trying to develop a black and white art style on the go. I do not recommend it. That first page took forever, like 5 hours, I think, not even counting the sketch. It's supposed to be like her memories falling down, like her life, basically. I don't know. It doesn't really pop as much as I wanted, and the text kind of messes up the composition. Like with manga, or just comics in general, you want the flow of the page to follow a Z pattern, so that it feels natural to read in the correct order. And to improve the readability, you'd want the text bubbles along that Z path, kind of, to guide the eye all the way through the page. But yeah, it's not the best here for sure. Now, moving on to the second page, I tried to do something fancy with the panels, like having the first one get shorter as they go into the cave, and then widen as they explore it. And then the monster hand reaches through the panels to grab the second girl. That was pretty different from what I had planned for it though, so it took me another 5 hours for that one too. So let's do some math. 2 pages, 5 hours each. That's 10 hours in a day, if my math is correct. I just have 16 more to do. Now, to be fair, I think for the first 2 pages, I went a little too hard on the rendering with all the lighting and detailed environments that nobody will probably ever notice. So let me show you how I made those at least, because I'm pretty happy with how they came out. For the background details, I just grabbed some photos on the internet and did a bunch of modifications to it. I'll show you. First, I desaturate the photo. Then I adjust the levels to increase the contrast, slap some screen tone textures on top, and then some subtle shadows on a different layer, erase some parts of the screen tone to create some highlights, and then draw over it to make it read better. Looks kind of good, no? But I'm not really using screen tones the way you're supposed to. So probably don't copy this if you're working on the actual manga. Like, I'm not expecting this to ever get printed, so I can get away with a lot of stuff. Normally, you wouldn't want anything important in those margins here, because that's where the pages in the book come together. So it's kind of hard to read. But yeah, anyways, all of those backgrounds took some major time. Time that I don't have. So I can definitely see why manga artists, hire assistants to take care of those backgrounds. So the first 2 pages are done. They're probably going to be the worst pages, right? Because they're the first ones. The rest is only going to get faster, but 16 more pages to do on Friday. Ooh. So the last day is here. It's Friday. So just another 15 hours is going to get me to that 100-hour limit that I set for myself. I just need some fuel to keep going, and let's do this. While working on this, I actually made this new brush that I think works a lot better for inking. It's got a lot of characters, actually probably becoming one of my favorite brushes. And I'll actually be adding it to my advanced brush set, so if you have that, well, you can just go ahead and download the new brush. Updates are always free. The link to it is in the video description. I'm done. I did as much as I possibly could with the time I had left, but you can see there's still some pages to finish. And it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to finish, but honestly, I was able to do way more than I had planned. I did put in a little over 100 hours on this though in a single week, so it's gonna make sense, I guess. That was crazy. And that was my question going into this. Could my art fundamentals alone carry me through this? Well, you tell me. Here it is, finally. So like if I paid $1 for this, like if I paid any money for this, I would probably want my money back. But there are a couple of drawings in there that I'm proud of, you know? As a whole, it's mid, but there's some bits that are pretty good. Maybe? I guess it's not bad for something that was put together so quickly from scratch with no experience. I'm coping hard right now. Anyways, this is literally one of the hardest things that I've done in a long time. Of course, I would probably redo it completely different if I had to do it again, now that I have some experience. But I had a blast doing this, honestly. Like you saw, it's not finished completely. I have a few more pages to finalize, but I plan on doing that. So make sure you follow me on social media where I'll be posting all of the final pages as I wrap them up. And not that I didn't before, but I seriously have mad respect, you know, for manga artists that do this week in, week out for a living. This is work, son. I barely slept all week. It was non-stop from morning to night. It's basically all that was in my head, all I was thinking about. Didn't watch any TV, didn't take any break. I was eating at my desk and still I came up short of doing 20 pages. So in the end, what would I improve if I did this again or like continue the story? So many things. Drawing character emotions, I was a struggle. I'm not good at that. I need more practice. Posing was a struggle. It still feels kind of stiff. The story, I think a lot of things don't really come through that clearly. Like just this one example maybe where I was trying to convey that she's sucking up all the mana from things around the house. I could have definitely used a little bit more panels to make that more obvious, or how her pet buggy got smaller all of a sudden, or even the beginning of the story where things happened way too fast. All in all, I think it shows that I was rushing. There's this saying, you know, for comics that I had in my mind the whole time, which is show, don't tell. And I feel like I came up short a couple places. Another thing that I didn't even think about going into this, but was the dialogues. How to give personality through the way a person speaks to somebody else. I think it turned out okay, but I spent so many hours rewriting the text, adjusting the bubble placements. It's just like that's a muscle that really never work out. Of course, there's also like page layouts, how to lay out all the panels to convey the story, you know, as clearly as possible. So the layout is just kind of basic. The pacing of the story is also something I struggled with. Like how many panels should I use to convey that part of the story versus that part? I don't think I got it right. And then how the characters develop, how they grow. Does it feel natural or not? I think I could do much better with practice. And then maybe one last thing that I didn't consider at all going into this, but it's just like the sound effects. Mangas are full of sound effects and how they incorporate them into the panel designs, how the text itself becomes kind of this artistic tool to enhance the drawings. So yeah, basically everything could be much better, but I learned a ton doing this. I highly recommend it. It was so fun too. I'll really need to brush up on writing and page layouts now that I know what my shortcomings are, but I feel like everything else was manageable with, you know, art fundamentals alone. Like I wasn't completely lost going into this. And those are the same art fundamentals that I teach in my art program that you can learn more about with the link in the video description. The 8th-year anniversary sale is ending soon. Don't miss out on the massive discount that you can take advantage of for a few more days only. Check down below to know exactly when the sale ends. But yeah, if you've ever wanted the skills to draw your own manga, your own comics, I got you. So what am I going to do with this project once I've finalized all the pages? Maybe I'll take my time and write a second chapter, or maybe I'll rework the first one before I do that, or maybe a new story if you find like this one sucks. That will kind of depend on your feedback. So definitely let me know down in the comments. I feel like I might want to do this again. Just no more 100-hour work weeks. If I do it again, I'll want to take my time and not feel rushed. But yeah, that's it. I did it. Woo! This was an insane amount of work, so I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, share it around. It really helps. And of course, I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.